Thanks for coming along. So, what do you think you can bring to WhatCulture?
Well, for starters, I brought my CV if you want to see that. Yeah, that's probably
It's a good start. What do you know about what we do here at WhatCulture?
Yeah, well, I've heard a few things. Obviously, the reason I want to come and work.
You'll do.
Hello and welcome to the NXT Takeaway, a brand new show here at WhatCulture where we'll be taking a look at everything that happened in this week's episode of NXT. I am your host, Adam Nicholas. Yes, my name is Adam. No, I'm not joking. And yes, I really look forward to your comments. Now, before we get started, I just want to take this opportunity to say a thank you to the guys who came before me. So to two incredible Adams, to two very talented Kings, and to one hell of a driver, I just wanted to say thank you very much for everything you've given us, and I look forward to seeing what comes with the next chapter. However, the show must go on, or in the case of this show, it must begin. So let's kick things off with a segment that I like to call the Perfect 10. William Regal opened up the show with a big announcement about the upcoming pay-per-view TakeOver Houston. He declared there'd be a fatal four-way match for the vacant women's title. Kairi Sane has already qualified for that match by winning the Mae Young Classic, and the other three competitors will be decided in the coming weeks. The promos at the bookend of the show were really strong. Eric Young got the ball rolling with his opening promo, where he said, and I quote, "The only thing for sure is change, and Adam Cole, tonight, I'm going to take you to the edge of sanity." Adam Cole mirrored that sentiment in his promo before their match at the end of the show, where he said, and I quote again, "What you feel is change. What you feel is a shock to the system." Simple and effective work from both guys, but really tied together the episode nicely. So cease and desist orders have been a bit of a thing over the last few weeks. Obviously, you had the controversy with the Young Bucks and the Too Sweet. And unfortunately, it seems like it's now cropping up in NXT as well. I don't know if you're aware, but Lars Sullivan will probably be getting a cease and desist from Simon Miller soon, as on his entrances, he can be seen coming down the ring, slapping every part of his head all the way down to his feet. I'm pretty sure someone must have asked him why before he went out there, but I suppose it's up to Simon Miller if he wants to take action regarding that. So tying together that last point nicely was the match between Lars Sullivan and Oney Lorcan. I really enjoyed that match. It was a classic tale of the small guy versus the big guy. Lorcan gave it everything he had and really did look strong in this match, but it seems to be the case that Lars Sullivan's being booked very strong. Triple H is high on Lars as the big monster of NXT, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here on out. It was the end of that match that brought up our next talking point. Lars Sullivan went to attack Oney Lorcan after the bell, only to be saved by Danny Burch, who managed to distract him long enough to let Oney Lorcan get out the ring. Interesting now, Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan had a match against each other a few weeks ago, and that was an absolute slobber knocker in fairness. And coupling that together with the backstage segment we saw where William Regal is watching them train together in what seemed to be a tag team, it's making me think that perhaps we could be headed for a Danny Burch, Oney Lorcan tag team, but only time will tell. At number 6, I've gone for this guy. For those of you who don't know, much like I didn't know, that's Patrick Scott. Patrick Scott came in to do the job this week against Heavy Machinery with his tag team partner, Demetrius Bronson. And to be fair, the whole thing just screamed of Marv from Home Alone. Great moment where he came in and he was up against, I think it was Tucker Knight, and he delivered a massive slap to Tucker Knight, who literally stared him in the face like he hadn't even touched him. Scott did a classically over-the-top, sad face, staring at his hand as if nothing was going to help him here. He followed that up by getting tagged into a match, quickly proclaiming, "I got you," thinking he was going to put a dent on Otis Dozovic, and sadly, Dozovic clotheslined him all the way to the floor like he wasn't even there. Number 7 comes from the end of the Liv Morgan-Vanessa Bourne match. There was a fan in the crowd as Liv Morgan was celebrating who decided it would be entertaining to give her the little classic Tyler Bate wave, and as we all know, there's been a very interesting Twitter exchange between those two, so it was a cheeky little nod from the fan. Next up, we got the debut of Fabian Aichner. I actually watched Aichner when he was in the Cruiserweight Classic and really enjoyed him then. Obviously, at that point, he was only really in it to be a bit more of an enhancement talent, but he comes in, made his debut, and I thought he had a great match against Cassius Ohno. Really good chance for him to showcase his skills. He's got the power. He's got the high-flying ability. It's hard to tell at this point if he was just there for a one-match deal or if this is going to be more of a permanent fixture, but I would quite like to see him again because he put on a great match with Cassius Ohno, and I'm sure he could do the same with a bunch of others in the division. Our penultimate moment came in the backstage interview with Drew McIntyre. I thought he delivered a concise promo. He really looked like a champion in his demeanour, and very much so I was buying into what he was saying. He was really kind of convincing, and I believed it, which is what you want when you've got a guy who's supposed to be running your company. And to quote the last line that I really enjoyed, he said, "Next week may be my first defence, but I promise you it will not be my last." Strong words from the great Scott, and I'm looking forward to seeing how his match against Roderick Strong turns out next week. And finally, coming in at number 10, was it ever really in doubt? Adam Cole's debut took place on this episode of NXT, and to have anybody else at the perfect 10 spot would be pretty ridiculous. We've waited a long time to see Cole in WWE, and I really think he's going to be something big. He looks like a star. I really like the faction that he's in with Fish and O'Reilly. I think that's got some legs on it. It's going to go far in the coming weeks. And most importantly, I think they found the role for him as this opportunistic heel. There was a couple of times in the match where he started to do things where you're thinking he had a very much sort of an era of edge about him. Kind of, he can win the match, he knows he can win the match, but he decided to cut the corners instead. And I really think with that kind of role that they've put him in, he's going to flourish. The match with Eric Young was really good, but I think the main point here was to kind of tie together the fact that Sanity and Undisputed Era are going to be going into a program together moving forward. And of course, that can't be bad because Eric Young and his gang are doing really well at the minute, and it'll be interesting to see what it brings. Now let's move on to our next segment, which I like to call the match of the night. So this week's match of the night comes from the original KO, Cassius Ohno, and your man Fabian Aichner, whose name I have said so many times now, I'm starting to lose my mind. Now I thought I'd be standing here giving this match to Adam Cole and his debut, but actually it turns out it's Fabian Aichner's debut, which is one that seems to have produced the match of the night. Only Lorcan and Lars Sullivan were a close second. They really put on quite a slobber knocker, but this one really, for me, had all the elements. I think it really showcased Aichner very well. I thought it was a solid debut from Aichner, really gave him a chance to showcase his power. There was a few times he managed to lift Cassius Ohno, which is no easy feat from his size, and I think it was the combination of the power that he showed in the slams and the lifting of Ohno, as well as the high-flying stuff he did, like the springboard off the ropes. If Aichner's going to join the ranks more permanently, we have to wait and see, but if he's going to put on matches like he did last night, then I think he's very much welcome in the NXT division. And with that, I think it could be time for our next section, which I like to call the Twitter Takeover. Okay, so the Twitter Takeover is where you send in your questions and I'll give you my take on the best of the bunch. So let's dive right in and see what we've got. So the first question comes from @AlexTurk, who says, who is your next NXT Women's Champion and why? It looks like it's going to be Kairi Sane. Everything seems to be pointing in that direction, and after she won the Mae Young Classic, you think they're going to invest some stock in her. However, I think Ember Moon is right up there, and she's kind of the most complete package of a wrestler, in my opinion, who's down in the women's division. However, I think she's going to miss the boat a little bit like Becky Lynch and Alexa Bliss did, but I suppose in the end it worked out pretty well for them, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think Kairi Sane is where they're going to be headed in the coming weeks for that. Our next question comes from @Keza Hines, or Hins, whichever one it is, and they say, do you think they should have a second title on the show? If so, what should it be and who should win it? There's definitely pros and cons to a second title on the show. Obviously there's time restrictions because the show is only 1 hour long, and I guess to some extent we do kind of have that already with the UK Championship, although at this time the UK Championship seems to strictly be for UK performers to compete. However, I would, if it was up to me personally, and maybe in an ideal situation, I would like to see a second title there, because I think it would be nice to give a definition between the top guys and the guys in the middle who are still trying to get a name for themselves. If they were going to do that, I would say maybe giving it to a vet like somebody like Cassius Ohno. As we saw with Fabian Aichner, he seems like a guy who can carry the younger guys through a match, very much like the John Cena US Open Challenge, where he gives a guy a chance to come in and showcase what he can do. And the last question for this week comes from @RealRossWayman, who says, which main roster superstar would you like to send down to NXT to repackage/reignite their WWE career? So this is something I've actually been discussing recently with people. I really think that Dolph Ziggler was the guy who should have been going down to NXT. I appreciate he started his new stick on SmackDown, so I guess that's kind of working for him. You'll have to ask him, I don't know. But my opinion, I think you could really get the best out of Dolph because he needs a kind of hard reset. So if you send him down to NXT, there's a really good chance he could go down there as a heel. Maybe, I don't know if he loses a match that forces him to go down there, or if the GMs just say to him, you're not good enough to be on our show anymore. Send him down there, have him go through a bunch of jobbers at the beginning, really go across like a heel and start beating people up on a regular basis. Move him slowly further up the card. Obviously, there's going to get to a point where he would end up clashing with the likes of the top guys, and it's a bit defeatist to have him win those matches. But if he was being a heel, he could do some very underhand tactics, that kind of thing, which could get it over. I really think that would work for Dolph. And then I guess another guy who, if it wasn't to be Dolph, I think really I'd love to see Luke Harper down there, only because I really want to see him get a chance to actually wrestle, and I think he could tear it up down in NXT. Thanks for the questions, guys. Keep them coming next week. We really want to hear what gets you ticking when it comes to NXT. And last but certainly not least, we're going to end on our final segment for the day, which is the takeaway. So here I'm going to wrap this up with the biggest takeaway from the episode of NXT. Now obviously there was quite a few things happened, but most importantly I think we can say has got to be the debut of Adam Cole. There's a lot of people who have waited quite a while to see Adam Cole in an NXT ring, and we've now seen it. It looks impressive, he looks like a superstar, the faction look great, and I think if they do it right, they could be onto a big winner here. So for me, the biggest takeaway from this week's episode is Adam Cole and the boys are the shit. So that's it from this week's episode of the NXT Takeaway. Thanks very much for checking it out. Much like NXT, we're in a period of change here at WhatCulture, but to all of you guys who've stuck by us, we really appreciate your support, and we look forward to bringing you new and intriguing content as the weeks go by. I've been Adam Nicholas, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.